Hello, friends. Tonight we drift into a world that moves more slowly than the one you and I know. A world woven from gentle routines, tiny professions, and the soft rhythm of everyday life in ages long gone. We're going to wander through forgotten crafts, ancient tools, small rituals, and the delicate work that once shaped entire cultures, yet left almost no echo in the noise of modern history. Before we begin, you might not survive this because you might fall asleep far too early, and honestly, I won't blame you at all. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually like what I do here. And if you feel up to it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I always love seeing how our little quiet community spreads across the world. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle white noise in the background, and let's begin our journey tonight. You find yourself stepping into a soft, dim landscape, neither past nor present, but something between the two. It feels like a museum that forgot to build walls, a place where time has dissolved into a pleasant mist. The air is warm enough to comfort, cool enough to keep your senses awake just a little longer. There is no rush here. Nothing demands your attention. Everything waits for you. A path of light-colored sand stretches forward, and with each step you take, the ground feels more familiar, as if you've walked this way in a dream. A gentle breeze brushes against your skin, carrying the faint scent of wood, warm rice, and something slightly sweet, maybe wildflowers, or maybe just imagination blending with history. Above you, lanterns hover in the air like floating fireflies. Their glow pulses slowly, as though breathing. They illuminate carved symbols representing different professions, some recognizable, others mysterious. A small bucket, a flower petal, a stylized drop of water, a reed pen, a curved crescent, a little sand rake. You realize that each lantern marks a profession long forgotten, a quiet job once cherished, perhaps by just a few individuals in distant corners of the world. Some scholars still argue that the smallest professions were the ones that shaped culture the most, not through war or invention, but through the soft and steady maintenance of daily life. It's a peaceful thought, one that settles around you like a warm blanket. A whisper drifts through the air, not from a person but from the place itself. It seems to invite you deeper, so you follow. Soon the path widens into a serene clearing, almost like the common ground between many worlds. At its center stands a smooth stone circle, cool and polished as if worn by 1,000 careful hands. Around the circle sit small tools, a bamboo scoop, a feather brush, a clay bowl, a reed stylus. Objects with no hurry, no sharpness, no urgency. Your eyes pause on a small bronze spoon with a tiny sun engraved at the handle. It looks out of place among the rest. As you step closer, a faint vibration hums beneath your feet, as though the ground remembers older footsteps. A soft sound follows, something like the distant tapping of water against pottery. You tilt your head, listening. The sound fades, but a sense of calm lingers, settling deep inside your chest. Across ancient cultures, people often woke to professions that began before the first light touched the horizon. For example, in Japan during certain periods, workers known as dew gatherers walked among the morning plants to collect droplets used in rituals and remedies. That's a real piece of history, tucked quietly into old texts and fading traditions. And though that profession may not be the one we meet yet, its gentle spirit seems to echo in this clearing. You wonder how many hands carried professions like these, simple, tender jobs that required no fame, no applause, but shaped communities through their steadiness. It makes you think of how often history remembers kings, warriors, architects, yet almost never the person who lit morning lanterns, or prepared ink before sunrise, or tended the slow drip of a water clock in a silent Egyptian temple. Your fingers brush the edge of the stone circle, warm, surprisingly warm, and as they do, the lanterns above sway ever so slightly, as though acknowledging your presence. For just a moment, the clearing changes. You blink, thinking it's just a trick of the light, but no. One of the lanterns flickers with a strange image, not a tool, but a small creature, a frog wearing what looks suspiciously like a tiny, woven hat. It's a strange detail, undeniably odd, and you can't help quietly smiling. Perhaps it's a playful fragment of folklore slipping through the cracks, or maybe the lantern is teasing you, reminding you that history is full of unexpected corners and charming oddities. You take a slow breath. Everything here seems designed to lower your heartbeat, to loosen every muscle, to let your mind drift into a gentler space. When you exhale, the lanterns dim slightly. When you inhale, they brighten again. You feel, in a subtle way, that this place breathes with you. Another step forward, and the soft world around you shifts again. The clearing becomes edged with tall, thin trees, their leaves glowing faintly as though holding the memory of morning sunlight. The trail ahead narrows into something more intimate, like a path meant for a single person traveling quietly. You pause at the threshold. You sense that you're about to cross into the first profession, the first forgotten craft waiting to be remembered. But for now, the path holds its breath, letting you stand in the comfort of anticipation. Here, in this gentle place, you're not just a traveler, you're a witness to the soft, almost invisible moments that once made up the heartbeat of old societies. History here is not loud. It does not shout dates or kings or battles. It whispers routines, soft footfalls, and careful hands. And tonight, you walk side by side with those whispers. Take another small breath. Feel the softness of the path beneath your feet. Notice how your shoulders release just a little more tension. Ahead, a faint blue glow begins to shimmer, like the cool light of dawn reflecting on a leaf. Your journey through forgotten professions begins there. Part 2. Mist Gatherers of Japan. You step toward the faint blue glow, and the landscape around you shifts with the softness of a curtain being drawn aside. The sandy path cools beneath your feet, and the air grows moist, touched by a delicate chill that feels like the very first breath of morning. Everything becomes quieter, even the quiet itself, like a deepening hush layered upon an already peaceful silence. The glow ahead brightens into soft streaks of dawn-colored mist drifting low across the ground. Pale lavender, silvery blue, and a hint of peach swirl like sleepy ribbons through the trees. You can almost taste the freshness, as though the world here has just been washed clean. Then you see them, tall, slender bamboo stalks rising on either side of you, their tips bending slightly under the weight of tiny dew droplets. Each droplet catches the light, glimmering like a minuscule star. You have arrived in the domain of the mist gatherers. For a moment, nothing moves, not even the bamboo. It feels as if nature is giving you time to adjust, to settle into the quiet rhythm of dawn in old Japan. A gentle rustling breaks the stillness. From between the bamboo stalks steps a figure dressed in soft linen robes, their sleeves loose and flowing. Their footsteps make almost no sound at all. The only thing you notice is the faint swish of fabric, and the occasional sparkle as a dew droplet falls into a wooden bowl they carry. This person bends gracefully, gathering droplets with a small strip of silk. They sweep the silk across the tips of leaves, then ring it with delicate precision over the bowl, coaxing each drop to fall without rushing. Dew gathering, tsuyu kumi, was once a quiet practice intertwined with early medicine and gentle spiritual rituals. It required patience, timing, and an intimate knowledge of morning weather. Some records suggest that people believed dew held the purity of dawn itself, a kind of natural blessing collected before the world fully woke. Some scholars still argue that the practice emerged partly from Shinto rituals centered on natural purity and renewal. Here, though, the work is less ritualistic and more meditative, calm movements flowing like a slow river. The mist gatherer does not speak, yet you feel welcomed. Their posture is relaxed, their breathing steady. You instinctively match your breath to theirs, inhaling the cool morning air, exhaling into the soft quiet. A second gatherer appears further down the path, this one carrying a larger bamboo container. They stand on a small wooden stool, reaching up to brush dew from the tallest leaves. Their balance is almost comically perfect, and yet there's a strange detail. Tiny wooden sandals strapped to the stool's legs as if the stool, too, is walking with them. The image makes you smile, the sort of odd, gentle charm that history often forgets to mention. As you walk deeper into the bamboo grove, you notice more gatherers, all moving with the same tranquil elegance. Some kneel near stone pathways, brushing dew from moss. Others use woven fans to coax mist toward wide pottery bowls. A few merely sit still, eyes closed, letting droplets collect on their sleeves before lifting the fabric over a waiting cup. Every sound here is soothing. The faint tapping of droplets, the whisper of bamboo leaves, the barely audible hum of morning light. A nearby gatherer motions for you to come closer, not with words but with a tilt of the head and a soft, encouraging smile. They hold out a strip of silk, offering you the chance to try. You reach for it and, surprisingly, the silk feels warmer than you expected, as if it's been absorbing the gentleness of the morning. You press it lightly against a leaf, watching a line of droplets cling to the fabric. When you ring it over a bowl, only 3 tiny drops fall, but each one sounds louder than such small drops should, like miniature bells chiming against your awareness. The gatherer nods approvingly, but there's no rush to teach, no pressure to learn. This profession is less about skill and more about stillness. You're not here to perform, you're simply here to be. A soft breeze drifts through the bamboo. The droplets shimmer, and for a moment, the entire grove seems to pause and breathe with you. You continue walking as the path opens into a wider clearing where an old stone basin sits at the center. Dew gatherers gently pour their collected droplets into it, allowing the water to merge into a shimmering pool. Legend once said that water gathered this way lost all bitterness and absorbed only the sweetness of dawn. Whether or not that's true, the pool looks undeniably serene. A small wooden plaque rests beside the basin. It holds a single line of delicate calligraphy that translates loosely to, "What is gathered softly lasts the longest." You let those words wash over you. They feel true, even if you can't explain why. Near the edge of the clearing, you spot a curious structure, almost like a wind chime but made of hollow bamboo tubes. Mist drifts into them, and every few moments a soft plink echoes inside as droplets fall through the tube and into a clay cup below. The rhythmic sound reminds you of a far gentler, early cousin of the water clocks kept in ancient Egypt, devices that also measured time with slow, deliberate drops. You realize how many cultures once relied on quiet professions like these, maintaining delicate relationships with nature and time. They weren't grand or famous, but they were deeply woven into the texture of daily life. A gatherer approaches the chimes and adjusts one tube by a single millimeter. Only one. But that tiny shift changes the rhythm of the dripping water almost imperceptibly, like tuning an instrument whose song is time itself. You stand there listening, and the sound feels like a heartbeat slowing into calmness. Across the grove, a soft bell rings. Not loud, not urgent, just a gentle signal that the sun is beginning to rise fully, and the precious dew will soon evaporate. The gatherers gracefully conclude their work, carefully sealing their collected droplets into clay containers. One of them passes by you, offering a small nod of farewell. Their sleeves brush your arm lightly, leaving behind a faint scent of cool morning air, clean, crisp, and almost sweet. The bamboo leaves overhead catch the first warm rays of sunrise, turning from silver to soft gold. The mist thins. The path ahead brightens. You take one last look at the dew-gatherers moving like ripples of calm across the grove. Then, feeling the world shift again, you step through the thinning mist. The trees begin to fade. The air warms. A new profession waits beyond the gentle morning light. Part 3. The soft steps of paper lantern menders. You step out of the fading mist of the bamboo grove, and the world warms around you like a gentle hand guiding you forward. The light shifts from cool dawn blue to a mellow amber glow, as though the sun has decided to rise just a little more for your sake. The air becomes tinged with the faint sweetness of rice paste and old wood, warm, earthy, comforting in a way that immediately invites you to slow down. The new path curves softly, leading you toward the heart of an old Japanese village. The houses are small, built of pale wood and topped with dark roofs that slope like the wings of resting birds. Everything here looks worn but lovingly cared for. Nothing is new, but nothing feels neglected either. It's a place where time moves gently, brushing lightly over every surface instead of carving into it. You notice at once that the village is lit not by the sun alone, but by hundreds of paper lanterns, some glowing softly, some flickering faintly, some dark and in need of repair. They hang from wooden beams, doorways, archways, and slim posts set into the ground like quiet sentinels. The lanterns sway very slightly in a breeze you cannot feel, as if they are breathing with the village. In the center square, a row of low wooden stools has been neatly arranged beneath a long awning. Sitting upon them are the paper lantern menders. Their movements are slow, precise, and almost impossibly graceful. Each artisan holds a lantern in their lap, tracing the torn edges of delicate paper with careful fingers. Their robes are soft shades of brown and cream, blending harmoniously with the muted colors of the village. You watch as one mender dips a slender brush into a bowl of warm rice glue. The brush hardly seems to move, yet the tiniest stroke repairs a frayed seam. The lantern glows more steadily as the paper strengthens. It feels like watching someone mend light itself. Another artisan lifts a lantern frame made of thin bamboo ribs. The ribs look so fragile that a single careless breath might break them, yet the mender handles them with complete confidence. They wrap new strips of paper around the frame, smoothing out each wrinkle with the side of their thumb. The lantern begins to take shape again, round, soft, welcoming. You step closer, drawn in by the peaceful rhythm. Every sound here is tender and calming. The whisper of paper being smoothed, the faint tapping of bamboo, the soft murmurs of artisans working in harmony. A mender notices your presence and smiles without looking up. Their eyes remain trained on the lantern in their hands, but their smile encourages you to sit on an empty stool nearby. You do, and the stool creaks in a friendly sort of way, as though it has been expecting you. In front of you sits a small basket filled with torn lantern pieces. Some are just scraps of paper, others look nearly salvageable. You touch one, its texture surprisingly crisp for something so thin. The moment you place the piece back, a gust of wind blows through the basket, and one scrap floats upward, settling right on your shoulder with comedic precision. You brush it off gently, and it flutters to the ground like a tiny bird. A strange detail, but somehow charming, almost as if the lantern fragment chose you for a brief moment. The mender beside you, still without looking away from their work. Another artisan hums an old tune, something simple with only 3 repeating notes. The melody loops like a small circle, calming your mind with every repetition. To your left, an elderly mender is working on a particularly large lantern. It has faded red paint depicting a crane mid-flight. The old artisan adjusts their glasses, taps the lantern lightly, and mutters, "Still good, still strong." Their voice is warm, soothing, as if speaking to a dear friend rather than an object. You look around and notice that different lanterns seem to carry different stories. Some show symbols of good fortune. Others depict plants or animals. A few show nothing but soft gradients of color, sunrise orange blending into sunset pink. A small child appears near the edge of the square, carrying a lantern almost twice their size. They wobble slightly, stepping carefully as though holding a bowl of water. The menders laugh quietly, not mocking but delighted. One motions the child closer, and together they kneel to repair a tear shaped like a crescent moon. The child watches with wide eyes, absorbing every movement. You feel a warmth inside your chest, the kind that makes your breathing slow and deep. A thought arises gently. How many small professions like this once existed across the world? Quiet crafts that held a village together not through power, but through light, care, and continuity. It reminds you of a piece of historical trivia, how during Japan's Edo period, lantern making and repairing were respected artisan trades. Lantern menders were often called upon during festivals to ensure every pathway glowed beautifully. Some scholars still argue that these artisans played a larger cultural role than history acknowledges, especially in shaping nighttime aesthetics in old towns and temples. You imagine how these menders must have been beloved by their communities, working long before electricity, tending to every lantern so travelers could find their way home at night. A gentle clatter draws your attention back to the present. One artisan accidentally drops a brush, and it rolls across the wooden planks, then keeps rolling, then rolls up a tiny bump in the wood in a way that seems physically impossible. It stops exactly at another artisan's foot. They pick it up without surprise, nodding as though expecting such odd behavior from the brush. Perhaps wood in this village has a playful spirit. The artisan near you finishes a lantern and brings it to a horizontal beam overhead. They hang it gently, and the lantern lights instantly, even though you're sure no one lit a candle inside it. It glows a warm, soft gold, filling the air with a subtle warmth. You look up and see that every lantern here glows on its own, as if animated by the care used to mend it. A butterfly drifts lazily through the square, landing briefly on a newly restored lantern. The wings shimmer with faint blue, contrasting beautifully against the warm paper. When the butterfly lifts off again, the lantern sways gently, as though waving goodbye. You notice a short, sloping bridge nearby. Lanterns line both sides, casting reflections in a shallow stream that flows beneath it. The water is so clear you can see pebbles resting peacefully at the bottom. Each lantern's reflection trembles slightly, turning every light into a soft, dancing glow. A mender rises and walks toward the bridge with a finished lantern. You decide to follow, your steps slow, almost floating. They hang the lantern on the rail and you watch as its reflection merges with the water, creating a shimmering double image. Somewhere behind you, another mender softly taps a bamboo frame. The sound echoes lightly, reminding you of the artisans who tuned bells in various cultures, another quiet profession you'll meet later on your journey. The thought makes you smile. The web of history is full of gentle parallels. The lantern mender beside you dips their hands briefly in the stream, then looks up at you with a tender expression, as if silently thanking you for visiting a craft the world has forgotten. Warm light, soft paper, careful hands, a village glowing like a memory. You take one last, slow breath. The air smells faintly of rice paste and the comforting sweetness of old wood. As you step away from the bridge, the lanterns dim ever so slightly, creating a pathway of soft, glowing markers guiding you toward the next profession. The sky shifts again, light fading, shadows stretching, colors warming and deepening. You walk onward, lanterns gently fading behind you, ready to enter the fragrant world of dawn-lit Persia. Part 4. Persian Sunrise. Perfume Makers. You follow the lantern-lit path as it narrows, softens, and eventually melts into a gentle blush of morning light. The air warms again, this time carrying a delicate sweetness, so subtle at first that you're not sure if it's real or just your imagination drifting. But step by slow step, the scent grows richer, layered like silk. Rose, saffron, honeyed petals, and a faint whisper of something citrus. You're no longer in Japan. Ahead, the world opens into an early morning Persian landscape, touched by the very first rays of sunrise. The sky blooms with soft apricot and pale gold, as though the heavens themselves are steeping in warm flower water. Low, mud brick homes rest peacefully along a gentle slope. Their rooftops are flat, their edges rounded like smooth clay bowls. Rows of earthen pots line the walls, each one catching the warming sunlight in a slightly different shade. You can almost feel their temperature rising beneath the growing day. But the true heart of this place lies further ahead, where a cluster of small distillation tents gathers near a field of fresh blossoms. This is the domain of the sunrise perfume makers. You inhale deeply, feeling the fragrances drift through the air in soft waves. Each breath feels like brushing your mind with a feather, light, unwinding, soothing. The perfume makers begin their work at dawn because they believe, and always have believed, that flowers are at their sweetest in the first hour of sunlight. Historically, this practice is rooted in truth. Rose harvesters in ancient Persia and later in regions like Kashan often plucked petals before the sun grew hot, preserving the purest scent. Some scholars still argue that early Persian distillers were among the first to refine the art of steam distillation, setting the foundation for much of the fragrance world today. You walk slowly toward the flower fields, where rows of Gol-e-Mohammadi roses stretch across the soil like pink clouds resting on earth. Workers move gently between the bushes, collecting petals with wide, shallow baskets. Their hands glide so softly that not a single stem shakes out of rhythm. Each worker wears light, flowy clothing, the fabrics dyed in soft hues of cream, dusky rose, and muted amber. Their steps are slow and deliberate. You have the sense that no one here would ever dare disturb the morning air with anything as abrupt as haste. A worker notices you and gestures for you to come closer. They offer you a freshly plucked rose petal. You pinch it lightly between your fingers. It feels impossibly thin, almost weightless, like a small whisper resting against your skin. When you lift the petal to your nose, its fragrance is both delicate and vibrant, alive in a way bottled perfume could never fully capture. The worker smiles at you, then returns to their basket, a soft melody. You feel the tune vibrate faintly in your chest, a calming loop that settles into your breathing. A little further on, you find a tent made of woven reeds and pale cloth. Inside, a small group of artisans stands around a set of copper distillation pots. The pots shine warmly, reflecting the rising sun in soft, wavering patterns. You watch as one artisan carefully adds rose petals and water into the vessel, sealing it with a clay lid. Another arranges coiled copper tubes that guide the fragrant steam into a cooling basin. The sound of heating water is gentle, tiny bubbles forming and popping, like a soft conversation between warmth and time. Standing on a wooden stool, a young apprentice peers carefully into the cooling basin. They lean so close that their hair almost touches the water. Suddenly, with the seriousness of a master scholar, they declare, "Still too warm." Another artisan nods solemnly, then places a single, smooth stone into the basin to lower the temperature by just a few degrees. The stone wears a tiny painted face, a strange detail. You can't help smiling. The apprentice catches your expression and, conspiratorially, it helps the water feel calm. You nod, accepting the logic with gentle amusement. As the fragrant steam begins its slow journey through the copper coils, the air fills with a soft halo of scent, like warm petals drifting around you. The mixture of natural aromas settles into a kind of invisible cushion, holding your senses in perfect balance. You step outside the tent and walk along a narrow path shaded by woven canopies. Beneath the shade, workers gently stir petals in shallow clay bowls. The petals float on water like delicate boats, and each bowl seems to hold its own small sunrise. Nearby, an elderly perfume maker sits cross-legged on a low platform. They sort petals by color and softness, their hands moving with a wisdom born from decades of repetition. When they pick up a petal, they examine it as though reading a message written in its texture. They beckon you closer and place a petal on your palm. "This one," the elder says softly, "holds the morning more gently." Their voice is warm and calm. Their eyes shimmer like polished amber. A small breeze drifts through the fields, carrying the fragrance outward in long, slow waves. Somewhere, a pot lid clinks softly. In the distance, a camel lets out a quiet, sleepy grunt, perhaps jealous that the roses receive so much attention this early. You wander further along a row of tents and discover an unusual sight. A tiny, round glass jar filled with a swirling pink mist. An apprentice tries to capture the mist using a feather, but the feather only waves through it like a hand through a dream. The apprentice sighs deeply, muttering something about capturing the essence of an essence. A strange mission, but charmingly earnest. You continue your slow exploration, breathing in the subtle layers of scent, each one grounding you further into this peaceful world. Petals rustle softly under gentle hands. Copper pots hum with warmth. Morning light glows through thin cloth, making everything look dipped in liquid honey. You feel your shoulders soften, your mind quiets, your breath deepens. The elder perfume maker approaches you once more. They hold a small clay vial sealed with wax. Without speaking, they place it into your hand. Its warmth spreads through your palm. Whatever is inside seems to pulse faintly, as though infused with the memory of sunrise itself. You bow your head in thanks, and the elder nods back, a quiet exchange of respect requiring no words. Then, as though carried by the rising sun, a gentle shift takes place around you. The fields begin to fade. The tents dissolve into warm light. The scent lingers for a moment longer, soft, affectionate, before drifting away like a final petal on the wind. Another path emerges before you. The sound of pages turning, soft as wings, beckons you forward. You take your first step toward the world of silent scholars and whispering ink. Part 5. The Whispering Calligraphers. You follow the soft trail of fragrance as it thins into warm light, fading petal by petal from the air. The golden glow gradually narrows into a single, focused beam that stretches forward like a path made of sunlight. You step into it, and the world around you shifts once more, quietly, gracefully, as though turning a page in the great book of time. The warmth remains, but the scent changes. No more roses, no more dew. Instead, the air grows still and cool, touched with hints of ink, parchment, and the faint dryness of old libraries. A hush falls deeper than any you felt on this journey so far, an almost sacred silence, the kind that seems to hold its breath out of respect. You've entered a khizana, an ancient Persian library. It stands tall and serene, built of pale stone with archways that curve like calm waves frozen in time. Thin slivers of morning light filter through high windows carved with geometric patterns. The patterns scatter gentle shapes across the floor, diamonds, petals, tiny stars, soft enough to lull the mind instantly. Inside, shelves stretch farther than they should. They twist and extend like gentle labyrinths, holding scrolls, bound volumes, and stacks of parchment wrapped in silk. Nothing seems dusty, though everything looks very old, as if time tends to this place with great affection. You take a slow step forward. The sound echoes, a soft, bare whisper against the smooth stone. Then you hear it, a faint rustling, like leaves fluttering in a dream. You round a column and discover a long, hardwood table bathed in soft amber light. Seated at the table are the whispering calligraphers, scribes who preserve knowledge not through memory alone, but through the calm, contemplative art of the pen. Their posture is perfect, yet relaxed. Their hands glide over parchment with slow precision, guided by ink brushes and reed pens. Each stroke is delicate, tender, as though they are painting the breath of language rather than merely writing it. The calligraphers do not speak. Their communication is entirely through movement. The steady dip of a brush, the subtle shift of a wrist, the measured exhale as ink settles into gentle curves. The script they create flows like soft rivers, elegant Persian letters rising and falling with the rhythm of ancient poetry. You can almost hear the words singing, though none are spoken. A calligrapher to your right lifts their brush and blows gently across the ink to help it dry. The breath is so soft that the ink shimmers instead of rippling. You watch it darken, deepening from bluish gray into a rich, velvety black. They glance at you with kind eyes and gesture for you to come closer. You approach, and they slide a small scrap of parchment toward you. Upon it is a freshly written word, one you recognize even if only vaguely. It means tranquility. The ink glistens like a calm pool beneath moonlight. You notice a curious detail, a tiny golden beetle carved into the handle of their pen. It seems to wink at you when the light hits it, an odd little flourish, whimsical and unexpected, almost mischievous amid such solemn work. The calligrapher taps the pen gently, as though subtly acknowledging the beetle's presence. Perhaps it's a charm for precision, or maybe, as some scholars still argue, artisans added small ornaments to their tools to personalize their craft, blending practicality with quiet joy. A soft sound draws your attention. Scrish, shh, scrish. The soothing rhythm of reed pens moving across parchment. The sound is hypnotic, like listening to silk being woven. It touches the edges of your awareness in a way that makes your eyelids heavier, your breathing slower. You continue walking along the long table. Each scribe works differently. Some trace bold, wide strokes. Others create delicate tendrils of ink as thin as threads. A young apprentice sits among them, practicing simple shapes. Their lines wobble ever so slightly, but their determination is steady. They repeat one curve again and again. At one point, the curve accidentally forms the shape of a small bird, a surprising, accidental flourish. The apprentice looks shocked, then delighted. A nearby master nods approvingly, as if to say that happy accidents are part of all great art. You take a moment to look around. Shelves filled with scrolls, scrolls filled with ink, ink filled with knowledge, knowledge shaped by slow, thoughtful hands. In history, scribes and calligraphers played essential roles in preserving manuscripts, scientific, philosophical, poetic, and spiritual. Many texts survive the centuries only because someone, somewhere, took the time to write them slowly, beautifully, and with great care. Your presence here feels like honoring every forgotten hand that ever dipped a pen into ink. A calligrapher at the far end of the table begins preparing new ink. They grind a small ink stick against a stone, adding drops of water slowly, patiently. The scent rises, a mild, mineral aroma, strangely calming. The grinding sound forms a soft rhythm, like distant rain tapping gently against a courtyard. When the ink reaches the perfect consistency, they nod once, satisfied. Another scribe nearby copies a text while holding the parchment in place with small polished stones. One stone, for reasons you cannot guess, has the shape of a sleepy cat, not stylized, just naturally shaped that way. A strange detail, but somehow fitting in this quiet, contemplative world. You reach a corner of the library where sunlight falls in a single, perfect beam. A calligrapher kneels there, writing with gold ink. Their letters shimmer, glowing for a moment before becoming part of the parchment. Each stroke looks like the curve of starlight. You feel an almost instinctive urge to slow your breathing so as not to disturb the beauty of it. As you watch, you notice something unusual. The gold ink doesn't just sit on the page, it gently glows, only faintly, only briefly, but enough to make you wonder if ancient libraries once held more magic than scholars realized. The calligrapher finishes the final stroke, pauses, then bows their head lightly, as though thanking the parchment for receiving their work. You wander deeper between tall columns and quiet shelves. A few calligraphers work alone in tiny alcoves, their candles flickering gently. One alcove contains a reading desk with a beautifully decorated manuscript. A single page is open, filled with swirling vines and birds drawn with impossible delicacy. Just beside it rests a reed pen wearing a miniature wool scarf, an adorable oddity. You smile. These little whimsical details seem intent on following you through history. The deeper you walk, the quieter everything becomes. The air feels thick with concentration and serenity, like a warm blanket woven from silence itself. You pause in the center of the library, allowing the entire place to settle around you. The rustle of parchment, the whisper of ink, the soft tapping of pen against pot. Each sound folds gently into the next. You inhale the stillness. You exhale the weight of the outside world. Gradually, the glow around the calligraphers softens. The shelves blur. The tables drift like boats on quiet water. A corridor of soft shadow opens behind you, leading away from the library. At its end, a faint dripping sound echoes rhythmically, steady, patient, ancient. The sound of time measured one drop at a time. You follow it. Part 6. Keepers of Egypt's Water Clocks. You follow the soft, rhythmic dripping that echoes like a distant heartbeat. With every step you take, the gentle sound grows clearer, steadier, more deliberate, each drop spaced perfectly apart, like pearls placed carefully along a thread. The corridor darkens around you, not ominously, but in a way that protects your senses, inviting the rest of the world to quiet down. The air warms gradually. Stone replaces parchment. Sand replaces silence. You feel the shift even before you see it. A golden light forms ahead of you, wavering softly like sunlight caught in a bowl of water. When you step through the last veil of shadow, the world opens into an ancient Egyptian temple courtyard, bathed in the warm glow of early morning. The sky is a pale, sleepy blue. The stone walls rise smooth and tall, carved with soft, flowing hieroglyphs. Palm trees sway gently at the edges of the courtyard, their shadows long and calming. And there, at the center of it all, stands a large clepsydra, a water clock. The clock is shaped like a tall, elegant bowl made of dark stone. Intricate markings ring its interior, each symbol representing a unit of time. Water drips slowly from a small aperture, its surface glimmering like melted gold under the morning sun. Beside it are the keepers of the water clocks, quiet custodians of time. They move with steady grace, their linen garments soft and pale, edges fluttering in the mild breeze. Their hands are wet with the cool water they tend, but their steps are dry, sure, measured. You can tell instantly that these are people who live by rhythm, not by urgency. One keeper kneels beside the clock, adjusting the water flow using a tiny bronze tool shaped like a lotus. Another stands just behind, recording the water level on a strip of papyrus with deliberate strokes of a reed pen. A third gently cleans the rim of the bowl, careful not to disturb the delicate ripples. You watch them for a moment, mesmerized by their careful coordination, each movement almost ceremonial in its slowness. Historically, water clocks in Egypt date as far back as the 14th century BCE. They were used not only to measure hours but to maintain temple schedules, astronomical observations, and nighttime rituals. Some scholars still argue that these devices were among the most accurate timekeepers of the ancient world, even rivaling early mechanical clocks in consistency. Yet the feel of this place is not mechanical at all. It is gently human, slow, quiet, patient. One keeper notices you and beckons with a small tilt of the head. You walk closer and kneel beside them. They scoop a cup of water and pour it gently into the clock. The ripple spreads in slow, perfect rings, each one catching a shard of sunlight. Then, they hand you the cup. You hold it, feeling the coolness seep into your palms. When you pour the water into the bowl, it falls with a sound so soft that it feels more like an exhale than a splash. The keeper smiles warmly at you, a silent acknowledgement that you have become part of the rhythm. Nearby, another keeper measures the shadow cast by a tall, thin obelisk. Their method appears almost mathematical, yet their posture is relaxed, contemplative. Suddenly, an unexpected detail catches your eye. A tiny lizard perched atop the obelisk's shadow line. It sits perfectly still, as if assisting with the calculation. When it blinks, very slowly, you feel as though it approves of the accuracy. The keeper glances at the lizard, nods respectfully, and continues their work. This place accepts small oddities with grace. You stand and begin to wander around the courtyard. To your right, a water channel trickles along the ground, guiding excess water away from the clock. Its path is lined with smooth stones, each one placed carefully, intentionally. As you walk beside it, the sound of flowing water follows you, soft, patient, timeless. A group of apprentices sits nearby, practicing how to control water flow by adjusting small clay valves. They giggle quietly when one apprentice accidentally creates a tiny fountain that splashes upward like a cheerful burst. The older keeper supervising them simply laughs, adjusting the valve with a quick twist. The water instantly calms again, settling into a steady stream. You watch the apprentices repeat the exercise. Some are confident, others cautious, but all approach the task with a blend of curiosity and peace. You move toward the far end of the courtyard where a smaller water clock rests within the shade. Here, a keeper is carving new time markings into its interior. Their carving tool emits a soft, scraping sound, rhythmic and soothing. They pause between each mark, ensuring perfect spacing. The devotion is palpable. You notice a line of hieroglyphs carved near the base of the clock. The keeper sees your gaze and translates with a soft voice. Time flows for those who listen. The words settle into you like warm sand. A breeze drifts through the courtyard, carrying with it faint hints of lotus blossoms and sun-warmed stone. The shadows shift gently, sliding across the ground in slow motion. Another drop falls from the clock. Plink. Then another. Plink. A slow, perfect heartbeat. The keepers gather briefly to check the alignment of the markings with the sun. They adjust a single symbol, only one, moving it by a barely visible amount. That tiny correction changes everything, subtly bringing the clock into harmony with the day. You marvel at the quiet care required to maintain time itself. It makes you think of how many forgotten professions once revolved around stillness, patience, and precision. People who measured things we rarely think about anymore: dew, petals, shadows, time. The sunlight deepens into a gentle gold. The shadows grow longer. The dripping slows. You sense the moment approaching when this profession will settle back into history and allow the next to rise. A keeper dips their hand into the water bowl, lets a final drop fall, then bows their head. One by one, the others do the same, acknowledging the completion of the morning cycle. The courtyard begins to soften at its edges. The obelisk fades. The water turns to mist. The keepers become silhouettes, then calm shadows, then memories. Another path opens, this one lined with smooth stones and soft raked patterns. You feel the grain beneath your feet, the texture of sand waiting for careful hands. You step forward into the tranquil world of the next forgotten craft. Part 7. The Sand Garden Designers. The last traces of the Egyptian courtyard dissolve into a warm haze of gold and pale blue. The steady dripping of water softens, stretching into a long, gentle hush, until it becomes something else entirely. A dry whisper, a soft brushing sound, like wind moving over tiny grains. You feel it before you see it, the texture of sand beneath your feet, warm and yielding, shaped not by nature's randomness but by deliberate, meditative hands. The air grows lighter, carrying a faint scent of pine, clean stone, and distant incense. It is neither hot nor cool, but a perfect balance between the two, as though the atmosphere itself wants nothing more than to soothe your thoughts. The world settles into focus. You now stand at the entrance of a serene courtyard, enclosed by smooth wooden walls the color of honey. Beyond them stretches a Japanese-style Karesunsui garden, a sand garden designed for contemplation, clarity, and the gentle ordering of the mind. You take one quiet step forward. Before you lies a wide expanse of pale, raked sand arranged in soft, concentric waves. The lines curve and swirl with such precision that they seem less like physical patterns and more like ripples frozen from a single, peaceful breath. Smooth stones sit in the center, large, quiet guardians surrounded by circles of sand that radiate outward like echoes. The sand garden designers are here. They move with impossible calm. Their robes are light, airy, almost blending into the landscape. Each holds a wooden rake made of bamboo, its teeth fine and evenly spaced. One designer draws a long stroke through the sand, slow, steady, unbroken. The sound is barely more than a whisper, a comforting hush that flows through you like a soft breeze. You can feel your shoulders relax, your breathing deepen, your mind slow to match the pace of the rake. The artisan's steps are deliberate, almost floating. They guide the rake with a kind of reverence, as though shaping the sand shapes something inside themselves as well. Historically, sand gardens, or dry landscape gardens, became prominent during Japan's Muromachi period, especially in Zen temples. Their purpose was not decoration but meditation, a physical manifestation of calmness, where patterns in the sand reflected the mind's desire for clarity. Some scholars still argue that the designs represented not landscapes but emotions, mapped gently into form. You watch as another designer approaches a smooth stone and begins tracing small circles around it. Each circle is perfectly spaced, growing wider and wider, until the pattern spreads into the larger waves already drawn. The harmony is so exact that it feels like watching music become visual. Then, an unexpected detail. One designer's rake has a tiny bell tied to its handle with a piece of red string. Every few minutes, with the slightest movement, the bell gives a soft, accidental tink. The artisan doesn't react at all, as if the little sound belongs here naturally, another note in the garden's quiet song. You smile. The designer closest to you pauses and looks up, meeting your eyes with a calm expression. They nod gently, silently inviting you to step deeper into the courtyard. You walk forward, your feet leaving no trace in the sand. Another surprising feature of this place, one that feels almost magical. A low wooden bench sits beneath the shade of a pine tree whose branches twist elegantly overhead. You sit down, feeling the subtle warmth of the wood against your palms. From here, you can see the entire courtyard, the raked waves, the stones, the designers moving with slow certainty, and the pine tree above you sprinkling soft needles of shadow. One designer approaches with a small rake, shorter and lighter, made for beginners. They offer it to you with a warm, encouraging smile. The gesture carries the same peaceful generosity you felt from the dew-gatherers, the lantern menders, the calligraphers, the timekeepers. It seems every forgotten profession has been waiting for you with open hands. You kneel at the garden's edge, holding the rake. The moment the bamboo teeth touch the sand, you feel something shift, something inside you loosen, soften, settle. You draw your first line. It is nowhere near perfect. It wavers slightly, dips in the middle, grows too narrow toward the end. You expect the designer to correct you gently, but instead they smile, bow their head, and draw a matching imperfect line beside yours, honoring your pattern with their own. A gesture of humility, of presence, of shared calm. The two lines together look intentional, harmonious, beautiful. The designer steps back and lets you continue if you wish. You run the rake through the sand again, slower this time, feeling its weight, the glide, the soft resistance. The sand responds in a way that makes you feel as though it has been waiting for you. Behind you, a different artisan is smoothing an area with the back of their rake, preparing it for a new pattern. They hum a soft, tuneless melody, something soothing, repetitive with no beginning or end. A small bird hops near the edge of the sand, head tilted curiously. Then, with startling boldness, it takes a single hop into the smooth sand and leaves a perfect row of tiny footprints. The designers all pause, look at the footprints, and smile as if the bird has just contributed its own tiny masterpiece. No one erases the marks. They simply rake gently around them, preserving the delicate trail. A strange little honor, given freely. Farther across the courtyard, you notice a designer using an unusually shaped rake. Its teeth form a gentle wave pattern. As they draw it across the sand, the design takes on a flowing, watery effect. The sand looks like rippling river water caught in stillness. It reminds you of the Egyptian water clock. A different culture, a different element, yet connected by the shared language of rhythm. Patterns of dew, patterns of petals, patterns of ink, patterns of time, and now patterns of sand. You sit back once more, feeling the peaceful weight of the moment settle into your breathing. The air shifts, the breeze slows, the shadows stretch slightly. The designers pause in perfect unison, bowing their heads toward the garden before placing their rakes down with quiet reverence. A soft glow begins to rise from the sand, maybe sunlight, maybe something else, turning the courtyard into a warm, dreamy haze. When you stand, the garden behind you remains perfect, untouched by time or footsteps. The path ahead forms gently, lined with stones shaped like miniature loaves. The air carries a warm, yeasty scent, like bread fresh from an oven at dawn. You take a slow, contented breath and step into the world of the Nile's quiet record keepers. Part 8. Bread Scribes of the Nile. The warm, yeasty scent grows richer with every step you take along the stone-lined path. The pale sand of the garden gives way to a soft, sunlit dust, warm beneath your feet, almost velvety. The air thickens with gentle heat, like a morning settling comfortably over the land. You sense water nearby, not through sound but through the coolness that rises unexpectedly from the earth. A moment later, the world opens into a riverside scene glowing with golden light. You have arrived at the Nile. Its waters glide with steady, unhurried grace, broad, shimmering, and timeless. Papyrus reeds sway softly at the banks, whispering in little rustling breaths. Mud brick bakeries line the river's edge, their rounded ovens bulging like sleeping animals. Clay jars sit in orderly rows, shaded beneath woven awnings. And between these ovens and jars move the bread scribes, quiet record keepers whose careful hands once shaped the daily rhythm of ancient Egyptian life. Their job is simple yet quietly essential: to track the grain, the loaves, the workers, and the deliveries. They do not shout numbers or tally quickly. They inscribe calmly, patiently, making sure each symbol is as balanced as the loaf it represents. You step closer, and the comforting warmth goes deeper than the skin, almost like standing beside a hearth after returning from a long journey. One scribe, sitting cross-legged on a woven mat, carves small hieratic marks into a thin slice of clay. Their reed stylus taps the surface with a soft tick, 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 each tap rhythmic and soothing. The clay tablets lie around them in neat stacks, tiny libraries of bread. Historically, bread and beer were staples of everyday Egyptian life, and scribes were essential in managing these food supplies. Baking was a daily ritual, and grain accounted for much of the ancient economy. Some scholars still argue that bread scribes were among the most accurate record keepers of their era, noting every grain with quiet devotion. The scribe in front of you pauses, looks up and smiles, an expression filled with calm welcome rather than interruption. They gesture for you to sit beside them, and you lower yourself onto the soft mat. A small puff of dust rises, shimmering in the slanted sunlight. Beside the scribe sits a clay bowl filled with damp dough. The smell is heavenly, slightly sour, warm and comforting. You watch as another worker shapes the dough into small, round loaves, placing them gently on a wooden board. Unexpectedly, one loaf rises a little too enthusiastically and flops sideways, landing with a soft plop against a jar. No one seems startled. The baker simply chuckles, pats the loaf back into shape, and sets it aside with a fond humility, as though acknowledging the bread's brief attempt at independence. The bread scribes continue their quiet documentation. One group records tallies on papyrus scrolls. Another presses small seals into clay to mark deliveries. A younger apprentice carries a basket of fresh loaves, pausing after every few steps to check whether one of the older scribes nods approvingly. A curious detail catches your eye. A tiny mound of flour on one table has been carefully shaped into what looks like a miniature pyramid, complete with a little doorway and steps. Someone, clearly, has a sense of humor hidden beneath all this calm precision. The scribe beside you hands you a stylus, lightweight, smooth, polished by years of use. Then, they push a small clay tablet toward you. The surface is soft and inviting. You press the stylus gently into the clay, drawing a simple symbol, maybe a loaf or a mark that represents one. It's crooked, wobbly, completely unprofessional. The scribe beams at you as though you've carved a masterpiece. They place your little tablet on top of the neat stack, preserving it among the records of the day. You can't help but laugh, softly, quietly, blending perfectly into this warm world of gentle industry. To your left, an older baker retrieves loaves from the oven using a long wooden paddle. The bread emerges dark golden, steaming softly in the air. The smell is calming in a way you didn't expect, earthy and wholesome. The baker taps the bottom of each loaf with a practiced knuckle, listening for the hollow sound that means the bread is cooked through. A nearby scribe documents each finished loaf with slow, measured strokes. Another group of scribes sits near the riverbank, using black ink to note grain distribution. The ink glides onto the papyrus smoothly, tracing symbols that look like flowing water rising fields, and full baskets. One scribe dips their pen, hesitates, and accidentally splatters a single dot of ink onto the margin. They sigh dramatically. The dot, surprisingly, looks like a tiny bird. They stare at it. They tilt their head. Finally, with the seriousness of a master artist, they add a beak and 2 legs. The bird is complete. The other scribes nod approvingly, as though acknowledging a small but meaningful artistic evolution. The sounds of the Nile accompany every moment here. The gentle lap of water, the rustle of reeds, the soft clatter of jars, the faint crackle from the ovens. You close your eyes for a moment and feel the warmth settle more deeply. The rhythmic world of bread and record-keeping blends into a gentle hum that relaxes every corner of your awareness. When you open your eyes, the shadows have grown longer. The loaves have been tallied. The fires have quieted. The day's work nears its calm end. The scribes gather their tablets and scrolls into tidy bundles. The bakers arrange the last loaves into straw baskets. A soft breeze flows along the river, brushing your cheek like a whisper of cool gratitude. You stand, taking in one last deep breath. Warm bread, sun-heated clay, calm water. The Nile fades behind you, turning into a shimmering band of gold. The clay tablets shimmer, then blur. The ovens soften into warm shapes, then melt into the horizon. Ahead, a cooler light glimmers, silver, soft, moonlit. A quiet world of parchment, maps, and star patterns awaits you. You step into the glow. Part 9. Moonlit Map Tracers. The golden shimmer of the Nile softens behind you, dissolving like warm light sinking beneath water. The heat of the sun fades from your skin, replaced by a gentle, silvery coolness. The air thins, quiets, and becomes delicately crisp, like inhaling a calm night breeze after a long day. As you take your next step, the glow around you dims into twilight. Another step. The world deepens into blue. And then the moon appears, full, luminous, serene. You've crossed into the domain of the map tracers, the quiet geographers of ages long past. The landscape around you settles into an open plateau, smooth and uncluttered, as though the earth itself wished to offer a perfect canvas for observation. Low stone platforms sit in neat rows, each illuminated by gentle pools of moonlight. The soft beams fall cleanly through narrow slits carved into tall stone columns that border the area. The columns act like silent guardians, their shadows stretching long and peaceful across the ground. The air holds a faint aroma of treated parchment, oil lamps, and cool stone. You step farther in, and the setting reveals itself. A nighttime cartographer's workshop beneath the open sky. The moonlit map tracers are already at work. They sit at their stone desks, each with a wide roll of parchment spread out before them. Their tools are arranged with meticulous care. Reed pens, tiny brushes, obsidian knives for trimming edges, bowls of midnight blue ink that shimmer faintly whenever the moon touches them. And above them, the stars. A vast, calm ocean of them, scattered like tiny silver seeds across the sky. The tracers work in silence, heads bent, bodies relaxed. Their movements are slow, intentional, and almost mystical. As they draw faint coastlines, river curves, and tiny mountain dots, their pens whisper across parchment in smooth, soothing strokes. Tick, shh, slide. Tick. Every sound is gentle enough to lull the mind deeper into stillness. One tracer, seated closest to you, wears a cloak the color of deep indigo. It blends almost perfectly with the night. They adjust their parchment slightly, using a polished stone weight shaped like a sleepy turtle, a charming and strange detail that makes you smile. The turtle stares upward with two tiny gemstone eyes, giving the impression that it, too, is studying the stars. The tracer looks up and sees you. Their expression is soft, welcoming, as if they've been expecting a quiet visitor wandering between worlds. They tilt their heads slightly, inviting you to come closer. You step beside them, and now you can see what they've been working on. A beautifully detailed coastline, drawn with long, flowing lines that remind you of the raked patterns in the sand garden. Every curve carries the elegance of someone who understands that landscapes are not sharp or hurried. They are gentle, patient, shaped by time and water. Historically, early map-making was done under natural light, often by moon or lamplight, especially in regions where heat made daytime work nearly impossible. Some scholars still argue that ancient astronomer cartographers used the night sky not only to navigate but to measure proportions of land, aligning earthly terrain with celestial patterns. You watch as the tracer dips their pen into the ink, lifts it slowly, and lets a single droplet fall back into the bowl, testing consistency by sound alone. Then they resume tracing the coastline, their hands steady and smooth. A soft rustling at your side draws your attention. Another tracer is using a round glass lens, early, simple, slightly imperfect, to study a star map. Their lens catches the moonlight and projects tiny, shimmering dots on the parchment below. The tracer then marks the projected points with quick, delicate strokes. The process feels half scientific, half magical. Suddenly, from somewhere near the edge of the workshop, a quiet yawn echoes, not human, but distinctly feline. You turn in time to see a small desert cat stretch languidly near a bowl of charcoal dust. The cat dips its paw into the dust, leaving dark little paw prints across a piece of parchment, and then sits proudly beside its work, as though it has contributed valuable geographical insight. The nearest tracer pauses, examines the paw prints, and then, without missing a beat, draws a tiny, elegant island chain based on the cat's accidental pattern, a strange, irresistible detail. You can't help smiling again. From another platform, a tracer lifts their gaze to the sky. They hold up a slim piece of bone etched with evenly spaced notches. As they align it with the moon and several key stars, they murmur something under their breath, a measured phrase, perhaps a simple mnemonic used for centuries. Then they mark a new position on their map, the pen leaving a faint but decisive dot. The stars above seem impossibly clear tonight. You tilt your head back and let your vision soften. The more you relax, the more stars appear, like ink slowly blooming across a dark page. A soft rustle passes through the workshop. Several tracers shift in unison, adjusting their desks so the moonlight hits their parchment at just the right angle. They do it gracefully, without speaking. The moon guides their work more gently than any lantern could. A young apprentice sits at the far corner, copying a simple star chart. Their strokes are careful but slightly shaky. At one point, their pen slips, creating a little comet-shaped blot. They stare at it in appalled horror. An elder tracer glides over with a calm smile. They study the blot thoughtfully, then take the apprentice's pen and add a tiny curved tail behind the mark, turning it into a shooting star. The apprentice beams, relieved and inspired. The elder pats their shoulder before returning to their own desk. The kindness is subtle, but it fills the space with warmth. Nearby, another tracer unrolls a scroll that is longer than their entire desk. It stretches onto the ground, forming a winding path of parchment illuminated by small oil lamps. The tracer uses a brush dipped in diluted ink to wash faint colors across the map: soft blues for oceans, pale ochre for plains, muted greens for forests. The pigments are so gentle they feel like dreams painted onto paper. You notice a delicate pattern near the top of the map, tiny arcs that mirror the moon's monthly phases. You feel a soft flutter of recognition, a reminder of how ancient travelers once used lunar cycles to guide journeys across deserts and seas. The tracer catches your gaze and nods as if confirming your thought. Someone taps lightly on a stone slab, creating a small rhythmic beat. Another tracer responds by tapping back. It's not communication exactly, just a comforting habit, like two people humming the same tune from opposite sides of a room. You step between the platforms, moving slowly so as not to disturb the parchment or the moonbeams. Every tracer you pass carries an expression of quiet concentration, softened by the serenity of the night. Finally, you reach the highest platform. Here, a master tracer stands beneath an archway carved with elegant symbols. Their parchment is much larger than the others, closer to a tapestry than a map. As you watch, they use a brush so fine you can't even see its bristles. Their strokes are impossibly smooth, tracing long coastlines that shimmer with silver dust. When they lift their hand, the dust glows faintly, just for a moment, before settling into the parchment like moonlight captured in ink. The effect is subtle enough to question, but clear enough to stir a feeling of quiet awe. A breeze passes over the plateau, causing the hanging lamps to sway. Shadows ripple gently. The master tracer looks at you with eyes that reflect the night sky in soft fragments. They incline their head, acknowledging you not as a visitor but as a fellow traveler in the long story of human observation. You feel a calm swell through you. Slowly, the tracers begin to put away their tools. They roll their scrolls. They cap their ink bowls. The moonlight grows softer, less crisp. The stars blur like wet ink spreading through parchment. You stand on the plateau as the workshop fades into a silver mist. The moon dissolves. The stars fold into darkness. The tracers become silhouettes, then distant memories. In the quiet, you hear something new. A faint metallic hum, a warm resonance, a gentle chime drifting through the night. A sound like tiny bells being tuned by patient hands. A warm glow appears ahead, golden and comforting. Your next forgotten profession waits there. You step toward the soft ringing. Part 10. Twilight Bell Tuners. The soft silver mist of the moonlit plateau drifts away, dissolving into a warm golden dusk. The faint metallic hum you heard grows clearer, wrapping itself around you like a gentle vibration in the air. Each step you take seems to resonate with that quiet ringing, as though the ground itself is humming a lullaby. The world brightens into a deep amber glow, not daylight, not candlelight, but something in between. The warm, timeless dimness of twilight. Ahead, a small workshop sits nestled between sloping hills of smooth stone. The structure is simple: wooden beams, an open doorway, lanterns swaying softly at the eaves. The air smells faintly of warm metal, cedar shavings, and the comforting sweetness of oil used to polish instruments. A low breeze stirs the curtains, sending thin ribbons of light across the ground. This is the home of the Twilight Bell Tuners, the artisans who shape the voices of small ceremonial bells, tuning each one not by instrument or measurement but by listening closely with a heart trained to hear subtle beauty. You step inside. The workshop is quiet, open, and filled with little wonders. Dozens of bells hang from thin strings, some shaped like droplets, others like small bowls, a few like tiny animals. They do not ring chaotically. Instead, they shift with the gentlest sound, like breathing metal. Their notes blend into a soft, shimmering atmosphere. A master bell tuner sits at a low table, surrounded by tools. Small hammers wrapped in cloth, wooden mallets, brushes dipped in a warm-smelling oil, and pieces of metal cooled to a calming, matte finish. The tuner wears robes dyed in soft twilight colors, deep purple, muted blue, and warm bronze. They hold a bell close to their ear and tap it lightly. Ting! A delicate high note floats into the air, beautiful but slightly uneven. You hear it waver just a fraction, like a thread pulled too tight. The tuner smiles gently, as if acknowledging the bell's effort. Then, with slow, precise taps, they reshape its inner edge. Each tap is patient, measured, so soft you can barely hear it. Some scholars still argue that early bell tuners across Asia developed extraordinarily refined hearing, capable of distinguishing variations in tone smaller than most modern instruments could record. Watching the master here, you believe it completely. Another bell tuner moves in the back of the workshop, an apprentice, judging by their cautious steps. They carry a small brass bell the size of a plum, holding it with exaggerated care. On the bell's surface is a strange little engraving, what appears to be a very determined-looking duck. An unexpected detail, wonderfully odd. You smile. The apprentice sets the bell on a cushion and gives it the tiniest tap. Tung! The sound wobbles dramatically to one side, almost comically. They sigh. The master chuckles softly, stands and joins them. With a warm hand on the apprentice's shoulder, the master listens to the tone again, tapping gently. This time, the wobble is less. The sound steadies. They work together in silence. You wander deeper inside. Dozens of bells hang overhead, each tuned to a slightly different note. As you move, they respond, not loudly, not intrusively, but with tiny resonances like soft stars twinkling in the air. It feels as though the bells are greeting you, acknowledging your journey across cultures and centuries. On another table, a bell rests half-finished. Its metal is a pale silver blue, still rough in some places and polished in others. You notice small scratches near its rim shaped vaguely like little footprints. Perhaps a small animal wandered across it before it cooled. A charming, accidental signature of nature. A soft voice interrupts your thoughts. The master tuner stands beside you, holding out a slender mallet wrapped in deep indigo cloth. They motion toward a bell hanging nearby, smooth, round, glowing faintly with warm reflections. You lift the mallet. The weight is perfect, light but steady. You tap the bell with the gentlest touch. Ding! The note blooms like a flower drifting open underwater, soft at first, then fuller, then fading into a velvety silence. The master nods with a smile full of quiet approval. Their eyes soften in a way that makes your breath slow down even more. You feel the moment settle into your chest like warm light. All around you, the bells begin to shimmer together, just barely, just enough to create a soft tapestry of sound. It's not a chorus. It's not music in any grand sense. It is the sound of peace being shaped by patient hands. The tuners begin hanging newly finished bells along the beams. Each bell adds a gentle note. Each note drifts into your awareness like a calming breeze. The twilight deepens, turning the entire workshop into a dreamlike pocket of sound and silence. You close your eyes for a moment, letting everything sink in. The dew gatherers, the lantern menders, the perfume makers, the whispering calligraphers, the keepers of flowing time, the sand garden designers, the bread scribes, the moonlit map tracers, and now the bell tuners. As though every forgotten profession has left a small imprint on your breath, your heartbeat, your mind. When you open your eyes again, the bells glow gently around you. The tuners bow. You return the gesture, grateful for the softness they've shared. The workshop light dims into golden mist. The bells become faint glimmers. The tuners fade like silhouettes painted on evening clouds. Then, quiet. A deep, warm, peaceful quiet. Your journey has reached its final rest. And now, as the last echoes of those twilight bells fade into the night, you find yourself returning, slowly, gently, to your own quiet space. Take one soft breath. Let it settle. Let everything loosen. You've wandered through forgotten worlds tonight, places shaped not by noise or spectacle, but by the quiet devotion of people whose hands tended the smallest, most tender rhythms of daily life. And the calm they carried now rests in you as well. You might feel a little lighter, a little slower, a little softer around the edges, as if some part of you remembers how to breathe like a dawn gatherer, how to glow like a mended lantern, how to flow like water measured drop by drop. These old professions, these gentle crafts, they're still alive inside the quiet moments you carry. You don't need to hold on to anything. Just let the imagery soften, like ink fading on old parchment, like sand settling into its patterns, like moonlight gliding over still water. If your eyes grow heavy, let them. If your thoughts drift, let them. You've earned this rest. Thank you, truly, for being here tonight, for walking these quiet paths with me, for inviting calm into your space, and for letting these forgotten hands guide you toward peace. If you haven't already, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if what we do here brings you comfort. And before you sleep, you're welcome to share in the comments where you're listening from. I love seeing our peaceful little community glowing across the world. For now, let your breath soften, let your body grow warm and heavy, and allow sleep to come the way all gentle things do, quietly, lovingly, effortlessly. Good night, friends. Sleep deeply, sleep peacefully. You've arrived exactly where you need to be.